You've been lying here for a while now, quietly instructing yourself to fall asleep. The harder you work at it, the further sleep seems to drift. And that isn't a flaw in you. It has a name. The effort meant to bring sleep is the very thing keeping you awake. Trying is a kind of doing, and doing keeps the body quietly alert when it needs to be released. The wanting slowly becomes the wall. Welcome to sleepy science. Sleep was never something you could force into arriving. It comes only when the pressure to produce it finally eases, when the body is allowed to drift rather than pushed. So let the worry about tomorrow's energy loosen and slip out of your hands. There is nothing to earn here, and no effort that makes rest come any sooner. Tonight we begin somewhere unexpected, by letting yourself stay softly, willingly awake, and noticing what happens the moment you stop trying at all. Sleep is one of the few things your body will not let you force. You can decide to walk across a room, and your legs obey. You can lift your hand simply by wishing it. But sleep belongs to a quieter category of experience, closer to digestion or the slow healing of a wound, something the body does on its own, once the conditions are right. Underneath everything we explore tonight sits one soft question. How do you fall asleep by trying to stay awake? For now, notice only this. The harder you reach for sleep, the further it seems to drift. That single paradox is where the whole night begins. Consider what happens the moment sleep becomes a goal. A goal is something you pursue, measure, and either reach or fail to reach. Yet sleep arrives only when the pursuit stops. This is the strange arithmetic at the center of restless nights. Effort, which helps you with nearly every other task, is the one ingredient that reliably keeps sleep away. Researchers who study insomnia describe this as a paradox of control. The very system that lets you master the waking world. Attention, intention, effort, is the system that must go quiet for sleep to come. Tonight is not about trying harder. It is about learning, gently, how to try less. Sleep scientists have a name for the pattern you may know too well. They call it sleep effort, the active, deliberate attempt to produce sleep, as though it were a task to be completed. In the early 2000s, researchers at the University of Glasgow built a short questionnaire, the Glasgow Sleep Effort Scale, to measure exactly this. People who scored high on sleep effort were far more likely to struggle at night, no matter how tired their bodies were. The finding was quietly revealing. It suggested that the trying itself, not noise, not caffeine, not the day's worries alone, had become part of the problem. Sleep effort is the trap that tightens the more you pull. There is a particular kind of worry that appears only at bedtime. During the day, you rarely wonder whether you are capable of falling asleep. But once sleep grows uncertain, the bed can turn into a stage, and sleep into a performance you might fail. Psychologists recognize this as a form of performance anxiety, the same nervousness a speaker feels before a crowd. The body responds to a feared task by preparing for effort. heart a little faster, muscles a little tighter, mind a little more alert. And so the simple act of caring whether you sleep produces the arousal that makes sleeping harder. The stage lights come up exactly when you needed the dark. Your nervous system runs on two broad settings, and understanding them explains a great deal. One branch, the sympathetic system, readies you for action, quickening the heart, sharpening attention, holding the muscles poised. The other, the parasympathetic system, lets you rest, digest, and drift. Sleep depends on the second branch rising as the first one settles. But trying to sleep is, in a biological sense, a kind of doing. It leans, however slightly, on the branch built for effort. So when you strain towards sleep, you send a faint signal of activity through a body that needed the opposite message. Here is the gentlest paradox. Reaching for rest can quietly switch on the machinery of wakefulness. Not all sleeplessness shares the same root. Sleep specialists describe one common form as psychophysiological insomnia, a long term for something quite ordinary. It means insomnia that has been learned, shaped by the mind and body responding to each other over time. It often begins with a stressful stretch of poor nights. The stress may pass, but a habit remains. The body has learned to link the approach of sleep with tension and effort. The original cause fades, and the pattern lingers on its own. This is oddly hopeful. If restlessness can be learned, then it can also, slowly and without force, be unlearned. Tonight leans in that gentler direction. Think for a moment about how deeply your surroundings shape your state. A kitchen can make you hungry. A familiar song can return an old feeling. The bed works the same way. For a good sleeper, the bed is a cue that means rest, and the body softens almost on contact. But after enough difficult nights, the bed can come to mean something else. Trying, waiting, watching the dark. Sleep researchers call this conditioned arousal. The place built for sleep has quietly become a signal for wakefulness. Your body is not broken. It has simply learned the wrong association. And what has been learned in one direction can, with patience, to be learned back the other way. In 1972, a psychologist named Richard Bootzin proposed a simple, elegant idea about sleep. He noticed that people with insomnia often did many things in bed besides sleep: worrying, planning, reading, watching the clock. Over time, the bed stopped being a pure signal for sleep and became a place of mixed, alert activity. His remedy, called stimulus control, was to rebuild the association. Use the bed for sleep, and when sleep will not come, rise gently and return only when drowsy. The principle behind it is what matters here. The bed is a kind of promise your body remembers. Keeping that promise simple helps sleep find its way back. Few small habits work against you as quietly as watching the clock. Each glance in the dark does two things at once. It turns time into arithmetic. How many hours remain? How much has already been lost? And arithmetic wakes the thinking mind. It also converts the soft, formless night into a countdown, sharpening the sense that something is being missed. Studies of people with insomnia find that clock monitoring reliably increases both worry and wakefulness. The numbers themselves become a source of pressure. This is why so many gentle approaches to sleep begin with the same quiet suggestion. Turn the clock away. What you cannot measure, you are less tempted to chase. There is a question that guarantees its own answer. If, in the dark, you ask yourself, "Am I asleep?" Yet the very asking proves you are not. Sleep and self-monitoring cannot occupy the same moment, because monitoring is an act of alert attention, and sleep is attention letting go. Researchers describe this as a monitoring bias. The more closely a person tracks their own drift towards sleep, the more they hold themselves at its edge. And here the night's question turns for the first time. Perhaps sleep does not resist you because something is wrong, but because a part of you is standing guard, checking. The task may not be to try harder, but to stop watching. Around 2006, a sleep researcher named Colin Espie offered a map of exactly how this trap forms. He called it the attention, intention, effort pathway, and it unfolds in 3 quiet stages. The first is attention. In good sleep, attention simply fades as the day loosens its grip. But once sleep becomes a concern, attention narrows toward it. You begin noticing every sign of wakefulness, every rustle of a still active mind. This selective focus is subtle and almost automatic. Yet, attention is a form of alertness, and alertness is the opposite of sleep. The first thread of the trap, then, is not worry or effort. It is simply looking too closely at something meant to be let go. The second stage in Espie's pathway is intention, the moment attention hardens into a plan. A good sleeper holds no intention to sleep. Sleep is not decided. It is allowed. But a struggling sleeper begins to intend it. I will fall asleep now. I need this to happen. Intention introduces will into a process that has no room for will. It is like intending your own heartbeat to slow, or commanding a blush to fade. The wish is sincere, but the mechanism does not take orders. And because the intention keeps failing, it grows more insistent, and the insistence adds pressure. Sleep, quietly, retreats a little further from the one who is reaching for it. The final stage in the pathway is effort, the active straining to make sleep happen. By now, the sequence is complete. Attention has narrowed onto sleep. Intention has turned it into a goal, and effort begins pushing toward that goal with everything the waking mind can offer. This is the heart of the trap, because effort is arousal wearing the costume of trying to relax. Espie's insight was that these 3, attention, intention, effort, feed one another in a loop, each tightening the next. The loop is what keeps ordinary sleeplessness alive long after its first cause has gone. To loosen it, you do not add more effort. You gently withdraw it, thread by thread. Notice how a worried mind scans for danger. Someone anxious about their health feels every twinge. Someone anxious about sleep detects every sign of being awake. Sleep researchers call this an attentional bias. The mind, once concerned, begins hunting for evidence of the very thing it fears. In the dark, you may find yourself registering a racing thought, a too warm pillow, a distant sound, and reading each as proof that sleep is failing. But the scanning is itself a kind of wakeful vigilance. The mind that searches for wakefulness will always find it, because searching is a waking act. The bias is quiet, and it is common, and simply seeing it begins, softly, to loosen its hold. When scientists look closely at the brains of people lying awake, they find something telling. Even as the body rests, the brain of a good sleeper slows into large, gentle waves. But in someone caught in the trying to sleep trap, the brain often shows faster, higher frequency activity, the electrical signature of a mind still lightly switched on. Sleep researchers call this cortical hyperarousal. It is not sudden. You would not feel it as fear. It registers only as a mind that will not fully power down. Thoughts that keep flickering when you long for dark. The body is willing to sleep. It is the arousal beneath the surface, quietly humming, that holds the last door open. One of the most common complaints at night is a mind that will not stop. Thoughts arrive uninvited. Tomorrow's tasks, old conversations, the simple fact of being awake. Sleep researchers call this cognitive arousal, and it is one of the clearest predictors of a difficult night. What makes it stubborn is that it often centers on sleep itself. Worrying about not sleeping becomes the very content that prevents sleep. The mind, trying to solve the problem, keeps the problem lit. Importantly, this racing is not a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It is arousal expressed as thought. And like all arousal, it settles most easily, not when fought, but when it is no longer fed. Arousal does not live only in the mind, it settles into the body as well. You may notice it as a jaw held tight, shoulders lifted toward the ears, a breath that stays shallow and high in the chest. Sleep researchers call this somatic arousal, the body's quiet readiness, its lingering preparation for a demand that never comes. The trouble is that trying to sleep can deepen it, because effort tenses the very muscles that needed to soften. Yet the body offers a gift the mind does not. It responds to the smallest gesture of release. A single slow exhale, a loosening of the hands, tells the nervous system that nothing is required now. The body listens first. People differ in how easily stress disturbs their sleep, and scientists can measure it. They call it sleep reactivity, the degree to which a stressful day spills into a wakeful night. Those with high sleep reactivity are more likely, over time, to develop lasting insomnia, because each hard night teaches the system to brace a little more. Here, the trying to sleep trap reveals its deeper shape. It is not only a nightly habit, it is a sensitivity that effort slowly sharpens. Every night spent straining towards sleep is a small lesson in bracing. The encouraging side is that the reverse holds too. Nights spent allowing rather than forcing gradually teach the system a calmer response. When sleep feels uncertain, it is natural to take precautions. You might go to bed earlier to gather more chances, or stay in bed longer in the morning to recover what was lost. Sleep researchers call these safety behaviors, and they carry a quiet irony. Spending more hours in bed awake weakens the bond between bed and sleep, and stretches the same amount of sleep thinner across the night. The precautions meant to protect rest end up eroding it. This is why many gentle methods do something that first sounds strange. They suggest spending a little less time in bed, not more. The aim is to let the bed mean sleep again, deep, unbroken, and unforced. In the late 1980s, a psychologist named Daniel Wegner uncovered a curious feature of the mind. Try not to think of a white bear, he told people, and the bear appeared at once, again and again. He called it the ironic process. When we try to suppress a thought, part of the mind must keep checking for it, which keeps it alive. Sleep falls into the same trap. Trying hard to relax means part of you monitors whether relaxing is working, and that monitoring is a form of tension. Trying not to think keeps a watcher awake. It is one more reason the night softens not through force, but through the quiet willingness to let the mind be as it is. The trying to sleep trap does not wait for nightfall. For many, it begins hours earlier, in the ordinary afternoon, with a single anticipating thought. I hope tonight is better. Sleep researchers call this anticipatory anxiety, worry that arrives ahead of the feared event and primes the body long before bedtime. By the time evening comes, the nervous system has already been rehearsing concern. So the bed is met not with drowsiness, but with a low, familiar vigilance. Recognizing this changes the picture. The struggle is not only about the moments in the dark, it is shaped across the whole day. And so calm, too, can be built earlier, in small, unhurried hours that ask nothing of the night. There is a particular arithmetic that visits the sleepless mind. It counts backward from the alarm, tallies the hours still possible, and measures them against the hours already lost. If I fall asleep now, I will get 5. Sleep scientists note that this kind of calculation, however reasonable it feels, is a reliable source of arousal. Each sum raises the stakes of the next minute and turns rest into a race against a shrinking number. Yet the body does not sleep on schedules or spreadsheets. It sleeps when it feels safe and unhurried. The counting mind, trying to manage the loss, only deepens it. Setting the numbers down, even for one night, is itself a form of rest. Because effort keeps sleep away, some researchers tried the opposite on purpose. Drawing on an old idea from the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, they asked people with insomnia to lie comfortably in the dark and gently try to stay awake, not by tension or bright light, but by simply keeping the eyes soft and resisting nothing. The approach is called Paradoxical Intention. By releasing the goal of sleeping, people also released the effort and the performance anxiety wrapped around it. And often, without noticing the moment, they drifted off. The finding points straight at tonight's question. Sleep may come most freely to the one who has quietly stopped requiring it to come at all. It helps to remember that wakefulness is not a flaw in your design. The alert, watchful state you fight at night is the same one that once kept your ancestors safe in the dark, attentive to sound and movement while others slept. Arousal is protective by nature. It means the body is caring for you, not failing you. The trouble is only that this ancient guard has been switched on at the wrong hour, by the ordinary worries of a modern life. Seen this way, the struggle softens. You are not broken, and there is nothing to defeat. There is only a watchful system that can be reassured, gently, that tonight it is safe to rest. Look back now at the shape these facts have drawn. Attention narrowing onto sleep. Intention hardening into a goal. Effort straining toward it. The bed learning wakefulness. The clock feeding worry. The body bracing out of ancient care. Each is a thread, and together they form a single knot. The trying to sleep trap, tightening precisely because you pull. The night's question has quietly turned. We began by asking how one falls asleep by trying to stay awake. Now it looks less like a riddle and more like a direction. Sleep is not something you do, but something you stop preventing. What remains is to learn, slowly, how that stopping feels. That is where the next stretch begins. Something in you has already loosened its grip on the effort, without your deciding it should. A gentle subscribe lets another restless mind find this quiet permission to stop trying too. Now, let's breathe here together, one sleepy soul at a time. Right now, without any instruction from you, your breath is already slower than it was when this hour began. You did not make that happen. You simply stopped adding to the day. That watcher you just heard about, the part that keeps checking whether sleep is working, is allowed to rest as well. It has nothing to guard here. Nothing in this room is asking to be solved. What you have not felt yet is what comes next. How the body, once it stops being managed, begins to reveal the quiet machinery that carries you towards sleep on its own. The same machinery running beneath every fact still ahead. Let your hands grow heavy where they lie. That is where we go from here. The instant you decide that sleep must happen tonight, something quiet shifts inside you. Sleep is one of the few things your body refuses to perform on command. It belongs to the involuntary systems, the same unhurried machinery that digests a meal or mends a small wound while you look away. Yet the moment rest becomes a goal. Your brain begins to treat it like any other task. It calls on the prefrontal cortex, the part built for effort and planning and solving. And effort is exactly the wrong instrument here. You cannot concentrate your way into unconsciousness. The harder that deliberate mind grips the outcome, the more awake the rest of you becomes. Deep in your nervous system run two opposing currents. One is the sympathetic branch, the ancient circuitry of fight or flight, tuned to keep you alert when something matters. The other is the parasympathetic branch, the rest and digest side that lets the body soften and slow. Sleep can only begin when the second one leads. But when you strain towards sleep, treating a restless night as a problem to defeat, your body reads the urgency as a signal of threat. The sympathetic current rises. Your muscles hold a little tension. Your senses sharpen. And the very system designed to protect you quietly stands guard against the rest you are chasing. Around midnight, a hormone called cortisol should be near its lowest point. Across a healthy day, it follows a gentle curve, peaking soon after you wake to lift you into the morning, then falling steadily into the dark. Cortisol is the body's stress messenger, released by a chain of signals known as the HPA axis. When the night becomes a battleground, that chain stays active. The pressure you feel about tomorrow keeps cortisol higher than it should be at this hour. And elevated cortisol nudges the brain toward vigilance, toward scanning and readiness. The chemistry meant to wake you at dawn is quietly being summoned at the wrong time. There is a small cluster of cells near the base of your brain called the locus coeruleus. It is the main source of norepinephrine, the chemical cousin of adrenaline that keeps the cortex bright and attentive. During calm, its firing slows and the mind is allowed to dim. During alarm, it surges, flooding the brain with wakefulness. Frustration is a form of alarm. Each wave of irritation at still being awake tells this cluster to fire again, releasing another pulse of the very chemical that holds sleep at bay. In trying harder, you are, without meaning to, refilling the tank of your own alertness. In the quiet, dark, you begin to notice your own heartbeat. With no daytime noise to cover it, each pulse feels louder, faster, more insistent. This is interoception, the brain's sense of the body's inner signals. And here a subtle trap opens. You feel the quickened beat. Read it as evidence that something is wrong. And that interpretation releases another small surge of stress chemistry, which lifts the heart rate further still. The sensation you were trying to calm becomes proof that you should worry. Your attention, turned inward and anxious, amplifies the very rhythm it is monitoring, until the pounding in your chest feels like a reason to stay awake. Your thoughts, meanwhile, refuse to settle. When the body finally lies still, a network in the brain called the default mode network grows more active. It is the circuitry of self-reference, of replaying the day and rehearsing tomorrow. In a calm mind, it drifts gently. In a pressured one, it accelerates into rumination, looping over the unfinished and the unresolved. Sleep researchers separate this cognitive arousal from the bodily kind. And for many people, the racing mind is the louder half. The tighter your grip on falling asleep, the more this inner narrator has to say, filling the silence you were hoping would finally arrive. At some point, you glance at the clock, and the arithmetic begins. 6 hours left. Now, only 5. Each calculation of how little time remains does not bring sleep closer, it pushes it away. Studies of clock watching find that the simple act of monitoring the time raises anxiety and lengthens the wait for sleep. The number becomes a scoreboard you are losing. Every glance renews the pressure, and the pressure renews the arousal. This is why sleep specialists so often suggest turning the clock away. Not because the hour does not matter, but because measuring your failure, minute by minute, is itself a way of staying awake. Researchers have a name for the state underneath all of this: hyperarousal. It describes a nervous system running slightly too hot, not only at night, but across the whole day. In people with chronic insomnia, studies find faster brain waves at sleep onset, higher metabolic rates, and stress hormones elevated around the clock. The body behaves as though a low alarm has been left ringing in another room. This is why the problem can feel so stubborn. You are not simply failing to relax in a single moment. You are trying to bring down a baseline that has quietly climbed. Hyperarousal is now considered the core engine of insomnia itself. Each failed attempt to sleep leaves a faint mark. The brain is a tireless pattern learner, and it notices what happens where. Night after night of lying awake, frustrated, straining, teaches it a quiet association. This bed is a place of effort and defeat, not of ease. Sleep scientists call this conditioned arousal. The bedroom, once neutral, becomes a cue that switches the nervous system on rather than off. It is why some people feel drowsy on the couch, then suddenly alert the moment their head touches the pillow. The struggle has trained the body to brace, exactly where and when you most need it to let go. Notice the shape the loop has taken. Effort raises arousal. Arousal delays sleep. The lost sleep sharpens the fear of losing more, which deepens the effort, which lifts the arousal again. Round and round, each turn tightening the next. Psychologists who study insomnia describe this as a cycle of attention, intention, and effort. You attend to sleep. You intend it fiercely. You try to force it. And all three push the outcome further from reach. The cruelty of it is that every tool you would normally use to solve a problem only feeds this one. The harder you work, the more awake you become. A single sleepless night changes how your brain reads the world. When rest is scarce, the amygdala, the small almond-shaped alarm center deep in the brain, grows more reactive. Imaging studies show it responding more strongly to ordinary, even neutral things after sleep loss, while the calm, reasoning regions that normally steady it lose some of their grip. So the tired mind tilts toward threat. Small worries feel larger, the dark feels less safe. And a brain that senses more danger produces more arousal, which costs you more sleep. One rough night can prime the very sensitivity that makes the next one harder. Long before sleep arrives, your body must cool. Sleep onset is gated by a gentle drop in core temperature, achieved as blood flows outward to warm the hands and feet and release heat into the room. It is why warm feet can help you drift off. But stress works against this quiet cooling. The same arousal that quickens the heart also keeps the body's furnace burning, holding your core a fraction too warm for the descent to begin. In striving to sleep, you keep yourself subtly activated, and an activated body stays warm. The thermostat that should be lowering itself toward night is being held, softly, in place. Consider your breath for a moment, without changing it yet. When you are anxious, breathing turns shallow and quick, drawn high in the chest, and this pattern signals alarm to the brainstem. But threaded through your body runs the vagus nerve, the longest nerve of the parasympathetic system, and it listens most closely to the out-breath. A slow, unhurried exhale tells it, gently, that there is no emergency here. Heart rate eases on each release. This is one quiet door out of the loop, not forced, simply allowed. The body already owns the mechanism for calm. The stress cycle only keeps you from letting it lead. Here is where the paradox begins to turn. In a series of studies, people struggling to sleep were given a strange instruction. Lie in bed and gently try to stay awake, eyes open, without any effort to force it either way. Many of them fell asleep faster than when they had been trying to sleep. Researchers who study this measure something they call sleep effort, and they find the same pattern again and again. The more a person strains towards sleep, the longer it takes. Remove the striving, and the obstacle it created dissolves. It is not a trick of the mind so much as a release of the pressure holding you awake. Step back now and see what the last many minutes have been quietly assembling. Every thread, the rising cortisol, the firing alarm cells, the noticed heartbeat, the clock's cruel arithmetic, the conditioned brace of the bed. Is your body doing exactly what you asked of it? You asked it to succeed at sleep, and it answered the only way a body knows to meet a demand: by staying alert enough to try. The question that opened this hour begins here to turn on its hinge. Perhaps you do not fall asleep by trying harder to stay awake, but by finally setting the demand down. What that release makes possible is where the next stretch leads. Something in you has loosened since we began. The breath a little slower, the shoulders a little lower, the urgency of tomorrow not quite as loud as it was. There is nothing here to solve and nowhere you need to arrive. Let one long exhale go, slower than the last, and feel how little effort this moment is actually asking of you. We will keep drifting from here, unhurried, together. Here is one of the strangest instructions in sleep science. When you climb into bed tonight, gently try to stay awake. Not with tension, not by sitting up or turning on a light. Simply lie in the dark and let yourself quietly resist sleep, as if you were in no hurry to drift off at all. This method has a name. Clinicians call it paradoxical intention, and it belongs to the family of behavioral techniques used inside cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. The idea sounds backward, almost like a trick played on yourself. Yet for many people who lie awake straining towards sleep, reversing the aim is exactly what finally loosens the grip. Notice what usually happens when sleep will not come. You begin to try. You rearrange the pillow. You count backward. You check the clock and quietly calculate the hours you have left. Each small effort carries a hidden demand. Sleep now. Please. Hurry. Researchers describe this as sleep effort, and it behaves like effort in any other setting. It raises alertness rather than lowering it. The very act of striving toward rest signals the body that something is at stake, and the nervous system answers by staying ready. So the harder you press, the further the shore seems to recede, and the night slowly becomes a test you feel you are failing in real time. Consider, then, what paradoxical intention actually removes. When you stop commanding yourself to sleep and instead permit yourself to stay awake, the demand simply dissolves. There is no longer a target to miss, no performance left to fail. The sleep researcher Colin Espie, who studied this closely, suggested that insomnia is often maintained by a struggle to control something that only arrives when control is released. By giving up the goal on purpose, you interrupt that struggle at its root. The pressure that kept you alert suddenly has nothing to push against. And in that small clearing, where you are no longer trying to fall, sleep is quietly free to approach on its own terms. Let yourself picture the practice more precisely. You lie comfortably, your body already still, and you make one gentle wish: to keep your eyes open just a little longer. You do not prop them. You do not strain the lids. You simply hold a soft intention to remain awake, the way you might on a long, warm afternoon when sleep keeps tugging at you anyway. Almost immediately, something interesting begins. The eyelids grow heavy against your wish. The mind, no longer defending itself against failure, starts to soften. You are trying to stay up, and yet the effort feels oddly restful, because for once nothing at all depends on the outcome. It helps to know what the evidence actually says, calmly and without overstating it. Paradoxical intention has been tested in controlled studies for several decades, and reviews of that research treat it as a recognized, evidence-based component of insomnia therapy. The effect is real, but it is modest. This is not a switch that flips the same way for everyone, and the trials behind it are relatively small. Some sleepers respond strongly, others notice only a gentle easing of the pressure. What the science supports is not a miracle, but a direction. For people whose wakefulness is fed by trying too hard, deliberately loosening the effort tends to help far more than it harms. there is a companion idea that makes the whole thing steadier, and it concerns what your bed has come to mean. Over many restless nights, a bed can quietly become a place the body associates with frustration and waking. A technique called stimulus control, developed by the psychologist Richard Bootzin, works to rebuild that association, using the bed for sleep alone, and rising to another room if long wakefulness sets in. So the mattress slowly relearns its simple message. Paired with the loosened effort of paradoxical intention, it forms a gentle partnership. One softens the striving. The other restores the bed as a cue that quietly means only rest and nothing else. Underneath the technique lives a mindset worth carrying long past tonight. The difference between allowing and forcing. Sleep is not something you do. It is something you stop preventing. You cannot will it the way you lift an arm, because the systems that carry you under work only when the reins go slack. Allowing means letting the heaviness gather without inspecting it, letting thoughts drift by without following them, letting the moment be quietly enough. It asks less of you than forcing does, not more. And that lightness is the whole point. You are learning to meet the night with open hands rather than a clenched grip, trusting the descent to find you. Let yourself hold this honestly, without turning a helpful idea into a promise. Paradoxical intention is a technique, not a guarantee, and it will not rescue every night or suit every person. For someone whose sleeplessness is driven mainly by pain, or by a restless body rather than a striving mind, other tools may matter more. Even for those, it fits well. It tends to work gradually, across nights rather than in a single evening. Knowing this is itself a kind of relief, because it means you are not failing if tonight still runs long. You are simply practicing a gentler relationship with wakefulness, and that relationship deepens slowly, the way trust always does. You have just heard that none of this arrives with a promise, that a long night is not a failure, only a night. Let that settle into wherever you are lying now. Feel how the wish to succeed at sleep has been a weight of its own, pressing faintly at the chest, tightening somewhere behind the eyes. You do not have to lift that weight tonight. You only have to loosen your hold on it. Let one breath leave slowly, and let a little of the trying leave with it. Nothing here needs to be won. What comes next will ask even less of you than this. So let the practice be simple when you try it. There is nothing to prepare and nothing to buy. You lie down as you already have. You let your body rest fully into the mattress, and you set one quiet, unhurried intention to stay awake just a while longer. Curious, unbothered, in no rush for anything to happen. When the eyelids begin to sink, you let them, without treating it as victory or defeat. If the mind wanders off toward the day, you gently return to the small, easy wish to remain awake. That is all. The effort is so light it barely deserves the name. And lightness is precisely what the night has been asking of you. Something has quietly reversed across these last facts, and it is worth pausing on. We began by asking how you might fall asleep by trying to stay awake. And the answer, gathering slowly, turns out not to be a trick at all. It is a release. Each thing you have learned points the same way. The striving towards sleep was the very thing holding it off. And loosening that striving is what lets the descent begin. Yet a deeper question waits underneath, still unanswered. If sleep comes only when you stop reaching for it, then what? Exactly. Are you being asked to trust as you finally let go? The hours ahead lean gently toward that. Somewhere in your brain, all day long, a molecule called adenosine has been quietly gathering. Every waking hour, as your cells spend energy, adenosine settles like sediment in still water, and the more of it that pools, the heavier your eyelids grow. This is the homeostatic sleep drive, a slow, chemical tide that rises without any instruction from you. You did nothing to build it and can do nothing to hurry it. By the time you lie down tonight, that tide is already high, already pulling. The pressure to sleep is not a task waiting for you. It is a chemistry already at work. The longer the day stretches, the stronger this pull becomes. And here is the reassurance folded inside that fact. Your body keeps the ledger for you. 16 or 17 hours of wakefulness leave you with more sleep pressure than you had at noon, whether or not you noticed it accumulating. Scientists call this process S, and it climbs steadily, indifferent to your worry about it. You cannot fall behind on generating it, and you cannot lose it by trying too hard. The drive that will carry you into sleep tonight has been building since you first opened your eyes this morning. Consider the coffee you may have had this afternoon. Caffeine does not erase your tiredness. It simply slips into the same receptors adenosine would fill, wearing a disguise, and blocks the signal from being read. The sleep pressure is still there underneath, patiently waiting, undiminished. When the caffeine finally clears, that held-back tide arrives all at once. Understanding this softens something. Your drive to sleep was never truly gone, only masked. You do not have to manufacture drowsiness through effort tonight. You only have to stop covering over a pull that your own body has been building faithfully all along. There is a second clock inside you, older than any bedside alarm. Deep in the brain, a cluster of cells called the suprachiasmatic nucleus tracks the turning of light and dark as evening falls, signals the pineal gland to release melatonin, opening a window the body recognizes as night. Researchers describe sleep as two forces meeting: the rising chemical pressure and this circadian timing, working in quiet cooperation. You do not schedule either one. They arrive on their own, like weather. When the pressure is high and the window is open, sleep does not need to be summoned. It simply becomes the easiest thing your body can do. Notice that you have never once, in your entire life, consciously performed the act of falling asleep. You cannot point to the moment it happened last night, because you were not there for it. The drive is automatic. The descent is involuntary. This is worth sitting with, because so much of the struggle comes from believing sleep is something you must do, when in truth it is something that happens to you once you step out of its way. The machinery runs beneath awareness, and it does not require your supervision. Your only real work tonight is to stop trying to help it. When a night runs short, the body does something quietly remarkable. It does not simply forget the lost sleep. The next time you sleep, it deepens. Slow wave sleep, the heaviest, most restorative stage, rebounds, growing longer and more intense to recover what was missed. This is called sleep debt. And the word debt is gentler than it sounds, because the body is a patient creditor that collects on its own terms. You do not have to force a repayment. If tonight is imperfect, the system self-corrects tomorrow, defending your rest with a persistence that asks nothing of your willpower. Rest and sleep are not the same thing, and the difference matters more than most people realize. When you lie still with your eyes closed, not yet asleep, your brain drifts into what scientists call the default mode network, a quieter, inward-turned pattern of activity. Your muscles loosen, your heart rate eases, and your nervous system begins to settle. This is genuine restoration, happening before sleep even arrives. So the pressure you may feel to fall asleep quickly rests on a false premise. You are not wasting the minutes you spend resting. You are already receiving something, even now, even before sleep arrives. Lying in calm, wakeful stillness lowers the very things that make you feel worn down. Your blood pressure drifts down. The stress hormone cortisol eases its grip. Muscle tension quietly releases its hold. Researchers have found that deeply restful wakefulness carries real physiological benefit, distinct from sleep, yet valuable in its own right. This dissolves the stakes entirely. If you believe you must sleep or the night is lost, every wakeful minute feels like failure. But if resting itself is restorative, then there is no failure available to you tonight. Only degrees of the same quiet gift. The mind slips towards sleep through a strange in-between country. Just before you cross over, your brain enters a state called hypnagogia, where thoughts loosen from logic and drift into soft, dreamlike images. Your brain waves slow into the theta range, and awareness becomes porous, half here and half elsewhere. You do not need to reach some final, verified state of sleep to be descending. These drowsy in-between minutes are already the beginning. Recognizing them changes how you hold the weight. You are not stuck outside a locked door. You are already in the hallway, already moving, already halfway gone. Falling asleep is less a door slamming shut and more a slow dissolving, one region at a time. Studies of the sleeping brain reveal that sleep can be local. Small patches of the cortex go offline before the rest, like lights dimming across a city rather than a single switch being thrown. Parts of you may already be resting while other parts still hum. This means there is no single threshold you must cross, no exact instant to seize. The transition is gradual and forgiving. You are not failing to sleep. You are simply somewhere along a gentle, uneven descent. Here is a strange mercy that sleep researchers discovered decades ago. Patients who could not sleep were asked to do the opposite of striving, to lie in bed and gently try to stay awake instead. Many fell asleep faster than before. The technique is called Paradoxical Intention, and it works because the pressure to perform sleep is itself what keeps you alert. When you release yourself from the demand to succeed, the performance anxiety dissolves, and with it, the arousal keeping you awake. The question of the night begins to answer itself. You fall asleep by no longer trying to. Thoughts arrive at night with a particular insistence, each one seeming to demand a response. But a strand of psychology called acceptance and commitment therapy offers a quieter way to hold them. Instead of arguing with a thought or trying to push it away, you learn to watch it as an event passing through. A cloud, not a command. This is called cognitive diffusion, and it loosens the grip a worry has on your body. The thought may still be there, but you are no longer fused to it. It floats. And a mind that lets thoughts float is a mind already softening towards sleep. Effort has a temperature, and it runs warm. When you try, really try, to fall asleep, your brain reads the striving itself as a signal that something is at stake, and it raises your arousal to meet the demand. But sleep is a state of de-arousal, the nervous system powering down. So effort and sleep pull in opposite directions. The harder you push, the further the shore recedes. This is why not caring so often works where willpower fails. Indifference lowers the stakes, and lowered stakes lower arousal. And lowered arousal is simply another name for the beginning of sleep. Deep in an old part of the brain sits a vigilance system, inherited from ancestors for whom the dark held real danger. When you strain to control your own sleep, monitoring each passing minute, this ancient watchman interprets the tension as a reason to stay alert, as though something must be guarded. Trying, to this part of you, looks like threat. But when you let go, when you stop scanning and grading, the watchman receives a different message. All is well. Nothing needs guarding here. Safety, not force, is what stands the vigilance down and lets the deeper systems take over. Gather everything the last hour has quietly shown. The tide of adenosine you cannot rush. The rest that heals before sleep even comes. The vigilance that only tries harder when you do. A single pattern rises from all of it. The question we have carried, how you fall asleep by trying to stay awake, was never a riddle to solve, but a knot to loosen. Every fact has pointed the same way. The effort is the obstacle. What remains is not a better technique for trying, but the slow discovery of how to stop grading your own wakefulness at all. The hour before sleep is not meant to be a cliff you leap from, but a slope you descend. When you dim the lights, lower your voice, and let the day's urgency drain away. You are building what researchers call a buffer zone, a stretch of low effort that tells your body the demands are over. Bright screens and racing tasks keep the system braced. Softness and dimness let it unclench. None of this requires trying. It requires the opposite. A deliberate loosening. A permission to do less and less, until doing nothing becomes the natural next step. Your body reads temperature as one of its oldest signals for sleep. As evening deepens, your core temperature naturally begins to fall, and this cooling is part of what opens the door to rest. This is why a warm bath an hour before bed can help, not because it heats you, but because the afterdrop, as your body sheds that warmth, mimics the cooling that sleep prefers. You do not manufacture this, you allow it. Cool sheets, a slightly cold room, skin releasing heat into the dark. These are passive invitations. Your body knows the way down. You need only let it descend. Repetition asks very little of you and gives a great deal back. When you follow the same gentle sequence each night, the same dimming, the same washing, the same settling in, your brain begins to recognize the pattern and prepares for sleep before you consciously decide to prending. A routine becomes a kind of external memory, carrying the work so your effortful mind does not have to. This is why consistency soothes. It lowers the cognitive load of falling asleep until almost none remains. The path becomes so worn and familiar that your body walks it on its own, needing no push. Breath is the one thread that runs between the part of you that worries and the part of you that rests. Most of your nervous system lies beyond conscious reach, but breathing sits at the border, something you can gently guide. When you let each exhale grow longer than the inhale, you nudge the vagus nerve, and the parasympathetic branch, the rest and digest side, begins to lead. Your heart slows, your body softens, the tide turns inward. You are not forcing calm, you are inviting it through the one door left open. Let the breath lengthen, and let the body follow it down. The worries that visit at midnight rarely have anything new to say. They circle because they have nowhere else to go, and the dark gives them room to grow loud. But you can offer them an earlier appointment. Psychologists suggest setting aside a short worry time during the day, 15 minutes to face the same concerns while the light is still on and the mind is still sharp. Given their moment earlier, the worries lose their nighttime urgency. They have already been heard. And a concern that has been heard, even briefly, is far more willing to let you sleep. There is a small study worth carrying into the dark with you. Researchers found that people who spent 5 minutes before bed writing a to-do list for the coming day fell asleep faster than those who wrote about tasks already done. The act of setting the list on paper seemed to release the mind from having to hold it. Once the thoughts had somewhere to rest outside your head no longer had to keep rehearsing them. This is offloading, trusting the page to remember, so you no longer must. What is written down can finally be set down. A racing mind is often just a mind trying to keep too much from slipping away at once, rehearsing and re-rehearsing because it fears forgetting. Cognitive scientists call the relief for this externalizing, moving the contents of your head into some trusted place outside it. A notebook, a list, a few whispered words. Once the load is set down, the rehearsal can stop, because the task of remembering has been handed off. The mind quiets, not because you commanded it to, but because you finally gave it permission to let go of what it was so tightly holding. Suppose the night stays open longer than you would like, and sleep is slow to come. Sleep researchers have found that the belief a wakeful night will be catastrophic is one of the very things that keeps people awake. The fear becomes the arousal. The arousal becomes the wakefulness. But the belief is untrue. Even a night of rest without much sleep leaves you far more functional than the anxious mind predicts. When you stop treating wakefulness as an emergency, the emergency dissolves, and the body, no longer braced against disaster, is finally free to drift. The fear you just heard about, that a wakeful night must be a disaster. Notice how it has quietly loosened its hold on you now. Here, in this dark, there is nothing tonight that must be guarded. Nothing that will break if sleep takes its time. Something is gathering toward a single, simple idea. That you were never the one required to make the sleep happen. Feel the place in your chest where the trying used to sit, and let it be empty. One slow breath. What we have been circling all along is very close now. One uneven night does not undo you. The body is built for variation, buffered against the occasional shortfall by systems that quietly compensate. The deeper rebound sleep that follows. The alertness that carries you through the day regardless. Study after study finds that people underestimate their own resilience, expecting ruin from a single hard night and finding, instead, that they manage. This lowers the stakes to almost nothing. If the worst outcome of tonight is a slightly tired tomorrow that you will absorb without trouble, then there is nothing here to defend against, and nothing to fear releasing yourself into. So return, one last time, to the question we began with. How do you fall asleep by trying to stay awake? Here is what the night has been showing, piece by piece. Sleep isn't a task you complete, but a state you permit, the moment you stop grading your own wakefulness. Measuring it, fighting it, demanding it improve. The guarding brain finally stands down. The trying was the only thing holding you at the surface. Set it down, and there is nothing left to keep you here. The drive was always ready. It only needed you to stop watching. Here is a gentle experiment for tonight. Instead of chasing sleep, lie comfortably and softly. Try to keep your eyes open, not straining, simply letting them close whenever they wish. This is called paradoxical intention, and sleep researchers have studied it for years. When you stop demanding sleep and quietly permit wakefulness instead, the pressure that kept you alert begins to loosen. The eyes grow heavy on their own, in their own time. For decades, One puzzle sat at the heart of insomnia. Why does wanting sleep so badly seem to push it away? Researchers named the answer sleep effort, the mental work of trying to make sleep happen. Ordinary sleep is effortless, something the body falls into. The moment you begin monitoring it and willing it along, you turn an automatic process into a task. And tasks keep the mind switched on, waiting for a result that only comes once the waiting stops. Sleep scientists describe a quiet chain that keeps you awake. Attention, intention, effort. First, your attention narrows onto sleep. Then, intention hardens into a goal. I will sleep now. Then, effort recruits the body to chase it. Each link tightens the next, and the whole system braces for a task instead of releasing into rest. Simply noticing this chain can begin to unhook it, because the moment you see the trying, you no longer have to obey it. Notice whether your eyes keep drifting toward the clock. Each glance quietly asks the same anxious question. How long now? How much is left? And every answer raises alertness a little more. Studies of insomnia find that clock monitoring deepens the struggle, feeding worry that makes sleep harder still. So turn the clock away, its face to the wall. Tonight, the hour does not matter. There is nowhere you need to be but here, breathing, at rest. Let your breathing slow, and let the out-breath grow gently longer than the in-breath. This small shift speaks directly to the vagus nerve, the calming thread that runs from brainstem to heart. As you exhale, the heart naturally slows. Lengthen the exhale, and it slows a little more. Around 6 unhurried breaths a minute, the nervous system tips toward its resting state. You are not forcing calm. You are simply letting the breath remind the body how to soften. Move your attention slowly through the body, one region at a time. Notice the jaw, often clenched without your knowing. Notice the shoulders, the hands, the space between the eyebrows. Wherever you find holding, let it ease, not by force, but by permission. This gentle release, studied for nearly a century as progressive relaxation, lowers muscle tension and the arousal that travels with it. The body cannot stay braced and fall asleep at once. Softening one invites the other. As sleep approaches, something quietly changes at the edges of the body. Blood flows outward to the hands and feet, and they grow faintly warm. This distal warming helps release heat from the core, and the small drop in core temperature is one of the body's own signals that sleep is near. So if your fingers and toes feel warm beneath the covers, take it kindly. The descent has already begun, without any instruction from you. If sleep has not yet come, the minutes are still not wasted. Lying quietly, with the muscles soft and the breath slow, the body enters a low, restorative state. Heart rate eases. Metabolism settles. The demands of the day fall away. This quiet wakefulness is not sleep, but it is far from nothing. Reframing these minutes as rest rather than failure, removes the very pressure that keeps sleep at a distance. You are already resting, even now. One kindness the science offers is this: you are likely sleeping more than you believe. In sleep laboratories, people who feel they lay awake for hours are often found to have drifted off far sooner and slept in fragments they never remembered. The mind, alert to wakefulness, records it vividly and lets sleep slip by unnoticed. So the long, empty night you fear may be shorter than it seems, much of it already spent, quietly, asleep. Listen for the demand beneath the restlessness, the silent command that says, "I must sleep now." That demand, however reasonable, is itself a form of arousal. It braces the body against the very softness it longs for. You can set it down, not by replacing it with another command, but by letting the whole requirement dissolve. There is no must here tonight. If sleep comes, it is welcome. If it waits, that is allowed too. Thoughts will keep arriving. This is what minds do, and it is not a mistake. The struggle begins only when you chase each one, or fight to push it away. Both are effort, and both keep you awake. Instead, let the thoughts drift past like leaves on slow water. Noticed, unheld, moving on. You need not empty the mind. You need only stop gripping. A thought unheld loses its charge, and the current carries it gently out of sight. Speak to yourself tonight the way you would to someone you love who cannot sleep. Research on self-compassion finds that a kinder inner voice lowers the body's threat response, easing the stress chemistry that fuels wakefulness. Frustration, by contrast, adds arousal to arousal. So when the restlessness returns, meet it softly. This is hard, and you are doing nothing wrong. Kindness is not only gentler, it is, quietly, the more effective path toward rest. All the while you have been awake, a molecule called adenosine has been gathering in the brain, deepening the pressure to sleep. You did not create this pressure, and you cannot rush it. It builds on its own, hour by hour, the natural weight of a long day. This is the body's homeostatic drive, patient and certain. Your only task is to stop resisting it. When you stop, the weight you have been holding off is finally allowed to settle. Sleep also answers to an inner clock, tuned across millions of years to the turning of the day. As night deepens, this clock quietly opens a gate. Melatonin rises. The body cools. Alertness farthest. When the gate is open and the pressure is high, sleep tips over on its own, like a wave that has gathered as far as it can. You cannot open the gate by force. You can only be there, soft and waiting, when it opens. So the shape of the whole night comes clear. Sleep is not an act you perform, but a state you are released into. Involuntary, like a blush or a yawn, arriving only when you are no longer trying to summon it. Every effort to force it is the one thing that holds it off. This is the quiet answer beneath the question. You fall asleep by trying to stay awake, because that is the moment you finally stop trying to sleep. Return, then, to the small experiment. When you gently intend to stay awake, the demand to sleep quietly dissolves, and with it, the performance and its anxiety. Sleep effort has nothing left to push against. The nervous system, no longer braced for a task, drifts toward its resting state. And in that unguarded softness, sleep slips in through the side door you left open by looking the other way. The paradox is not a trick. It is simply how release works. Even on a night, sleep visits only lightly. The quiet you are giving yourself matters. Lying still in the dark, the body conserves energy. The mind loosens its hold on the day, and the stress systems step down from their guard. Tomorrow may feel softer than the sleepless hours seem to promise. The night asks nothing of you but this stillness, and this stillness is already doing its quiet, patient work. And if this particular night stays wakeful, let it. No single night decides your health, your mind, or your days ahead. The body is remarkably forgiving, and sleep rebounds on its own when the pressure is allowed to build. The fear of one bad night often does more harm than the night itself. So release even that worry. Tomorrow's tiredness, if it comes, will pass, and sleep will find its way back to you. There is a difference worth knowing gently. Ordinary restless nights come and go for everyone. But when difficulty sleeping arrives 3 or more nights a week, and lingers for 3 months or longer, and wears on your days, it has a name: chronic insomnia. Naming it is not alarming. It is the first kind step toward help. If this describes your nights, know that it is common, understood, and, above all, treatable. For chronic insomnia, the most effective help is not a pill, but a practice. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, known as CBTI. Leading medical bodies now recommend it as the first-line treatment, ahead of sleeping medication. It gently retrains the habits and thoughts that keep sleep at bay, and its benefits tend to last long after the sessions end. Much of what you have heard tonight, easing effort, softening worry, grows from that same quiet science. Some signs deserve a doctor's kind attention. If exhaustion follows you through the day, if loud snoring or gasping interrupts the night, if worry or low mood presses in, or if sleep has been hard for months, these are worth mentioning to someone who can help. Reaching out is not weakness, it is care. Sleep troubles are among the most treatable of struggles, and you do not have to solve them alone in the dark. But tonight, in this hour, there is nothing to fix and nothing to solve. There is only the simplest of practices. Lie still. Let the breath lengthen and slow, and let your eyes close whenever they are ready, or stay open, if they prefer, with no argument either way. You are not managing anything now. You are simply here, in the soft, dark, letting the body do what it has always known how to do. Feel how the paradox quietly dissolves. The moment you allow yourself not to sleep, the pressure that kept you from sleeping is gone. There is nothing left to resist, nothing left to force, no door to push against. You are permitted to rest without sleeping, and permitted to sleep without trying. In that permission, the whole struggle sets itself down. Whatever comes next, sleep or gentle wakefulness, arrives now as a guest, not a demand. Something may have already shifted while you weren't watching. The breath has slowed without your steering it. The body has grown heavier against the bed. The grip you did not know you were holding has begun, finger by finger, to open. You are no longer keeping the door shut. And on the other side, sleep waits with its familiar patience, not to be seized, only to be let in. Whenever the last of the trying falls quiet. And here, at last, is the truth beneath all of it. You were never failing at sleep. You were only trying too hard to be let in, knocking, straining, certain the door was locked against you. But it was never locked. It only opens inward, and only when your hands are empty. Loosen your grip, weary one. Let the trying fall away. The door you have been pushing swings open on its own, and you are already through. An hour ago, we began with a question that sounded like a riddle. How could trying to stay awake be the way to fall asleep? Tonight it stopped being a riddle. We learned to name sleep effort, the quiet work that turns rest into a task. We let the out-breath lengthen until the heart slowed with it. We turned the clock to the wall and reframed the wakeful minutes as rest. What began as a struggle to force sleep became, fact by fact, the simple art of allowing it. Sleep was never a prize to be earned. It is a homecoming that waits for you to stop knocking. You carry a quieter knowledge now. Rest comes not to those who chase it, but to those who finally let go. Perhaps tonight's gentle unlearning loosened something in you, trying a little less, and finding sleep a little closer. A soft like, subscribe, or share helps another weary mind find this same quiet permission. An open door for the next restless soul. One quiet tap, one peaceful night at a time. Somewhere in you, a hand that has been holding tight all day is opening, finger by finger, into the dark. No effort keeps it closed now, and no effort opens it. It simply softens, the way a held breath finally leaves. Let your whole being dissolve into that opening. You are not pushing through the door. You are only, at last, being let through. You can let these last thoughts loosen now, like fingers uncurling from something they no longer need to hold. Let your body grow heavy and still against the bed. Sleep carries you gently through the door you have stopped guarding, into the rest that was always waiting. Sleepy science has spent many quiet hours in this territory, the soft place where the mind learns to stop striving. The next hour follows the part of tonight's question, this one left unfinished. What the body remembers how to do the moment you stop instructing it. That hour is waiting whenever you are ready. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Rest well, weary one. You are never failing, only holding on. Where curiosity ends and sleep begins. Good night.